It's a good thing I have the anti-shake thing on here. How are you?
Pretty good, thank God.
No.
Hello? Do you need my vote? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to this month's Lunch and Learn program. It's a very, very special program. I will tell you a little bit something about Caryl Herzfeld, our guest speaker. Caryl was born and raised in Midtown Manhattan. She went to City College, and she graduated Phi Beta Kappa with honors. She studied political science and history. She received a National Defense Foreign Language Fellowship and a Travel Fellowship from Columbia University to study Arabic and Middle Eastern studies. She took classes in art and various crafts at various schools. And she was also the Art and Crafts Director for 5 years at Camp Moshava, and I'm sure that all of us are familiar with Camp Moshava. Caryl was called upon, or is being called upon, by a series of communities to use her art and her talents for the beautification of synagogues and institutions for fundraising purposes. The wide variety of projects she has worked on incorporate different materials and utilize diverse knowledge and skills. Those projects have included etched and stained glass windows and doors, as well as paintings and illustrations using oil, watercolor, and acrylic paints. The scope of her work includes book illustrations, presentation certificates, aliyah posters, ketubot, family trees, and personalized name signs. From a personal approach, I'm very grateful to Caryl Herzfeld for what she has done for our synagogue. I'm sure that some of you are not aware of it, but about a year ago when we had the dinner, at which time we installed Rabbi Goldberg as the rabbi of the synagogue, we presented him with a Ktav Rabbanut, and Caryl was the one who decorated that parchment, that presentation, and made it very, very special. From a personal approach, we are a little bit related, in sort of a roundabout way. Carol's daughter is married to my nephew. She is wait, give me a chance for this. She's also the tennis to Phyllis Eisenman, who is my sister-in-law. Anyway, it's a pleasure and a privilege. I do so with great gratitude and appreciation to call upon Caryl Herzfeld. Caryl,
thank you. Before I start, I want to thank Jeff, who has been absolutely amazing answering all my questions. Do I have to talk into this? Yes. I have to talk into this. Am I talking?
I want my wife Rita to hear.
Oh. Yes, I appreciate your sparing him all the emails that went back and forth. All the work that I've done for organizations has primarily been gratis, anonymous, and I've loved every minute of it, and I grew as a result as an artist and as a person, I guess, as well.
Can you speak as a small group without it? You would prefer to? Okay. Speak without it, because there'll be feedback otherwise.
He'll do anything for attention.
We'll be quiet. We'll be quiet.
Okay. So all the years I would do work as a volunteer, and this year I decided I would apply for a grant. And I applied. I applied at the last minute, and I won the grant. And I was very surprised. It was a New York State Council of the Arts grant for original work. Ian, would you read it out loud for what it says?
Can I use a microphone? Speak
But turn around, Linda, please. Ian, turn around so that you're speaking to the audience.
People will hear me. Chesed Acts of Kindness in Willowbrook. Winner of New York State CA, I don't know what that is.
Council of the Arts.
Council of the Arts Original Work Grant for 2015. These 10 scenes made with recycled paper and other recyclables is made possible with funds from the Decentralization Program, a re-grant program of the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature, who are all in jail. And is administered by Staten Island Arts.
Okay, the interesting thing is I applied like 15 or 20 years ago to the same organization, and the art was Jewish. And at that time, that was very strange. Staten Island doesn't have a lot of Jews. We're all congregated in one place, the Orthodox Jews. But this year, they told me to apply for this grant under folk art. As a folk, we are a folk group, like all the other different groups, like I don't know, all the immigrant communities. So we fit into that category, which I thought was great. And it was to do recycle my art. My plan was to do everything in recycled materials. Because I can't throw anything out, ever. And I thought, what am I going to do with all the things that I have? Look at this wonderful bottle. What can it become? It can become a woman, and what will the woman be doing? And all those wonderful wine bottles, all I did was wrap paper around them and then make them into figures. And it's not even paper mache that would be giving it a title. There's no title. It's just using glue, paper, any kind of paper. This was the original. The last project that I did in this way was, well, 2 times ago, was Outstanding Women in Jewish History. For that project, it was the first time I had done this. I worked with these bottles to start with, and I made heads in different ways. If you blow up a balloon and you put Vaseline on it and you glue paper on it, I think I still have the balloon here, you prick a hole in the balloon so that the inside doesn't get moldy. And then you could add to it. And so some of these heads were done in that way. Another way to do it is to create a mold. You could start with clay or anything you want, and you can make a mold. And then you could pour plaster into the mold. I wasn't very good at that, so I didn't do it too many times. Another way to make faces was to use wooden circles or anything. So this, in Outstanding Women of Jewish History, this was going to be the leg, one of the legs of Golda Meir. But I had to make the legs a little thicker, a little stronger. This one didn't work, it was too thick, that's why I have it here. Backs of chairs, also, you can see, well, this one, the styrofoam that you get with the things that are sent to you in the mail, the barbecue sticks that you don't use but you've gotten dirty, they all come in very handy. And the newspapers that you're waiting to read, they all become recycled. And Jeff called my project The Cycle of Life in Recycled Materials. Now this was, the project after Outstanding Women in Jewish History. This was for Parshat Noach. My grandson in D.C. had a bar mitzvah. there were going to be many tables, and this was one of the 35 centerpieces. It's very hard to do 35 centerpieces, not just to do the work, but to think about what you're going to do that's different on each of the tables. The one that drew the most comments, the ones that drew the most comments were the ones when I gave up trying to do something really Jewish, and I did an elephant's head and a donkey's head. And the people who sat at the elephant's table said, well, why did we get an elephant? Why didn't we get the donkey? And the other way around. This one was up. This got kind of damaged. So there were, well, it's just paper. There should be a leaf there. So this was from Noah's Ark. I had done 3 arks, one before the flood, one in the middle of the flood, one after the flood. They're lots of fun to do, and you get very involved in it. Okay, so over here, it was very important to show the Willowbrook community. To me, I had moved to Staten Island from Manhattan. You are all blessed. You all live in communities. When I grew up in Midtown Manhattan, there were no children my age around. My sister had friends her age. There were 6 boys who were going to be bar mitzvahed, and she was 12 and they were 13, and she had a grand old time. But there were no boys when I was growing up, and there was only one girl, and she was Catholic, and she was wonderful, and she was very poor, and she ended up with her siblings in foster care. So to me, when I moved to Staten Island, this was heaven. I loved Manhattan. I loved Radio City Music Hall. I loved Bloomingdale's. I was right smack in the middle of the city. There was nothing more wonderful. But then I got married, and we moved to Staten Island, and I was introduced to a community that was extraordinary. You may all be used to it, but I wasn't used to people bringing food to a woman who just gave birth, taking care of the children without having to beg a parent. Everybody helped each other. It was a totally new experience. When my father died and people were there for me, I thought, this is incredible. And so my job in the community became that of artist. I had studied Arabic. I wanted to continue working with Arabic. But by default, I became the community artist, the resident artist of the community. But the work that I did was as a volunteer, and it was anonymous for the most part. And every time that I do something, it increased incrementally what I was being asked to do. So the last things that I was asked to do were big murals, and people would donate money, and designs for stained glass and etched glass windows. And then I was asked to do these things by other communities. And I loved doing it. My husband also liked doing it. He doesn't look like he, but he did. Okay, so this project that I was going to do for the New York State Council of the Arts grant was very exciting for me. How was I going to do it? And how was I going to do it in a reasonable amount of time so that my husband and I would have a life, and my children as well? So I had to plan very carefully. What was it about Staten Island? What was it about a Jewish community which was so wonderful? And I thought of all these institutions of Chesed. They're not institutions, but they are organized, institutionalized acts of Chesed which are unique to Orthodox Jews because we need them. We can't really function without working together as a community. It's so hard. So, this one, I need someone very strong to hold this. Who's going to help me hold this? Are you going to hold this? No. Who is strong? I need someone strong. Would you hold it for me?
I'm afraid not.
You could hold it. You really could. No.
I'll get. Hey, help me put. Now, can you take it back so I can go?
Yeah, go. See, it's just paper. Okay? It's paper, and it's the plastic containers that your cherry tomatoes come from, and well, I don't even know, the wool that my mother, when my mother died, she left all of these balls of wool, not enough to do any one thing out of. I tried making blankets for my kids, and I do it on the LL planes, but then you couldn't bring a crochet hook on. So this is done. Let's see if you could tell me what some of the things are that you could see. For example, what is this?
That's an IV.
Yes, it's an IV. That's good. No, it's a straw. It's a straw. And this is the IV. And the thing about this, which is so special to me, is when I did this and I worked on the figure, I didn't know what was going to come out, because it's very hard to work in paper as opposed to paper mache, which you could sculpt. But here you just have to pinch your fingers together and you get a nose, and you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes I use masking tape. It's not a recycled material, but I needed it. When I did this, I looked at the figure and I said, that's Sheila. I did this for Sheila. And Sheila was a woman who would go around visiting the hospitals all the time. She was so wonderful. She organized the hours and the days that people would go so that a sick person would not have 10 people one day and none the rest of the week. She was so terrific, and Sheila is still terrific, but she has had pancreatic cancer all this year. She's doing well, because it was caught early, but she had pancreatic cancer and she wasn't going out, and she was so sick and she was not feeling well, and I kept inviting her. I kept telling her whenever I called or visited, and I didn't do it as often as I wanted to because I was making these dumb pieces, but when I would speak to her, I'd say, I would like you to see my Bikur Cholim because you were the inspiration. And finally she came with her husband and daughter, and I gave her this very heavy piece, and she held it in her arms, and she said, it's light. I said, yes. And I asked her husband during the week, or the week after, how she was, because she was going to have her last treatment. And he said, she's doing great. It was like a shot in the arm to hold the piece and see the piece. So it means a lot to me because she is very wonderful. This was the first piece that I made in this group of figures, and I thought he was too big. Now I'd make all the pieces this big if I had the time, because they're sturdy. So the base of this is cast plaster, and everything else is makeshift. I have no idea what I did. It was a struggle every step of the way. I have the Hatzalah logo, And then I have this bag attached with, what do you call those, twisties?
Oh, the ties.
Yeah, twisty ties. Yeah, so that's how I connected it. What I really wanted to do in the beginning was I wanted to make all these figures move. Maybe if I do another project, I will have them move or become puppets or something like that. So this was the intention, and then I realized I could not spend 3 weeks on every figure and get the work done in time and also have a life. So I don't, let me see. This is just paper wrapped around, strips of paper. You can pass it around. Bottom, the plaster is kind of disintegrating a little. And
You break it home.
okay, while you pass that around, I'm going to tell you about this one. I am not, yes?
Is the shine from the glue?
Oh, well, the shine is from, I used house paint and I used gloss for the top coat. I used gesso underneath. There are about 6 coats of paint.
So it's basically on plaster or?
It's
or
not on
glue?
plaster, it's on, whoops. Well, I'll tell you, I'll answer your question in a few minutes. Okay, for this one, this is the Chevra Kadisha. Now, I never was a volunteer for the Chevra Kadisha, but I couldn't get enough information about what I wanted to show with regard to the Chevra Kadisha from the internet or from talking to people. So I went to a meeting of the Chevra Kadisha, and that inspired me to create this. It was really hard to determine what size the coffin should be in comparison to the figures and how to get it on the box. But it was very interesting for me to try and simulate the clothing of the woman. So this is actual cloth, and there's a bonnet on the woman, and I tried to conform to what they said at the meeting. You could pass it around. Oh, you don't have to worry. They're kind of very strong.
Yeah. Is your studio in your house?
My studio is my house, or my house is my studio. So the kitchen counters, the kitchen floor, the kitchen table, the dining room, the living room, one of the bedrooms, the entire den is filled with the centerpieces that my daughter-in-law has no room for, because at this point there are 55 of them. And in the garage I have all the things that I could not bear to throw out that belonged to my parents and my aunts. And Phyllis's son.
When Rabbi Reiner and Phyllis and I and a group went over to Carol's home, we saw where Jack and Carol used to sleep.
It's not funny. Yeah, when my kids are moving, like my kids made Aliyah, they brought all their stuff to our house. They said, you could use this. I don't recall opening the boxes, but I have their things in the boxes, and every now and then they call and they say, do you have any pajamas in a size 3 from, well, anyway, but we have my father's boat ticket from 1913, and Harold Levine, I don't know if any of you know Harold Levine, his birth announcement, I won't tell you what year, and my aunt's photographs from World War I in Africa. I don't know how she got those. Okay, let me put these back, and I'll take out.
So creative. This is amazing.
I don't sleep very much, so
you don't waste that time.
is there another one circulating? Yes. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this one, I don't know how many hours they take, and the reason I don't know is because they take an interminable amount of hours, because it's finding the materials. Is it a clementine box? Is it a diaper box? Good, okay. And what am I going to use for the legs? Well, I better use up all the paper towels instead of rags because I need that circular thing. And I better pick up those magazines in the pizza stores in Borough Park because I've run out of paper. For this one, I did buy the wooden dowels. The hair is wool, but I think one of these hairdos is made out of those twisties. And the books are magazines, anything with a hardcover cardboard, and the paper is paper. You know, all the things that you print and that the printing doesn't come out well on, and you do it again. That's what I use over here. Sleeves are hard to do. The position was hard to do, and this one is called Nachas. Nachas is an organization unique to Staten Island, founded by Milton Pfeiffer, and it began when people my age had children who were getting married, and many of them made Aliyah. We have a large number of people from Staten Island who have made Aliyah, and I know that because I was making the Aliyah posters all the time when Bernie Kaplan was alive, and Bernie Kaplan died, and nobody comes to my house with these huge picture frames telling me to add 5 names. Now there are 56 names that have to be put on a Aliyah poster, and the thought of doing it by hand is kind of hard because it's hard and I need motivation. Okay, so Nachas. So a lot of our members from the community went on Aliyah, and the grandparents would form a group. They would meet together regularly and discuss the problems pertaining to Aliyah for us, the parents, and how we could send things to Israel and whatever. So that's how this group started, but it evolved as our children grew. We began to have a more worldly image, and now the organization raises money to provide for kids who need medical equipment that is not provided for by insurance. And these are kids who are very, very sick. And so that's the purpose of Nachas now. Another reason for this sculpture is to show the learning that goes on in the community on a regular basis, which is unique to all Orthodox Jewish communities. Did not exist in my, well, it did. Once a week they had an hour in my neighborhood. Okay, Hatzalah man, is he around somewhere? Oh, right, okay. So, this one is Tomchei Shabbos. I'm sure you all know what Tomchei Shabbos is, providing food for the needy for Shabbos to enhance the Shabbos, which is a very important day of the week. And this was actually very easy to do. It's small, it went quickly, I would say. 3 days, 6 days, 18 hours a day. But it was fast in comparison. So let me see. I don't remember what the candles are made out of. It was something very thin, plastic. I don't know. No, it wasn't maybe a toothpick. No, matches are too thick, too wide. No, I think they were toothpicks. It's fabric. My husband was in the fabric business, and I never threw out the samples that he brought home. And they've come in useful for the outstanding women in Jewish history. I had so much fun. But this is cardboard, and the rest is paper. So I'm going to start over here. It's light, right?
Just for a moment, I want you to know that each month we send in publicity to the Jewish Link and to Jewish Standard, and sometimes it gets in, sometimes it doesn't get in. I want you to know, I don't know how many people you saw it or not, but the publishers of both papers thought enough of how special, because we sent over a picture of how special this work is that you're looking at, that you're being treated to right now, that those were published in the papers this last week. A very nice story, but this is a very special work of art.
Well, I want you all to know that Jeff has been incredible, second to my husband in dedication. So I was looking this morning for something I could give him so that he'll remember me. So I found an old painting, but it has a Shabbos Lachter that my daughter owns, and her Hanukkah menorah, and I did it in her home, and that's for you. But you can't throw it out.
Carol, that was very generous.
That's what happens when someone is wonderful. Okay, this is Nichol Mavelim. How wonderful it was when my community came out for us when my father died. And then when Jack's parents died, when my mother died, and 3 parents were sick at the same time. Now this has something that was actually bought in Michael's, because I loved the shape of it. And I couldn't decide if it should be a door or if it should be the cabinet door. And so I made it to represent both. On the door, somebody will have to say what it says. But here is somebody comforting a mourner. Behind the 2 of them is the food that is brought. So I'm going to start here. Are you able to read what it says on the door?
No, I can't.
I need someone with good eyes for small print. I keep picking on you.
It
Okay.
gives the visiting hours, and on top it says House of Mourning, the door is open. And visit. I thought at least it would be in Russian.
No. So you can pass it around, and
Do you have a favorite?
a favorite. I don't know.
Generally speaking, do you become personally attached to the pieces?
Oh, there are two pieces that I became personally attached to. In my previous centerpieces for my granddaughter's bat mitzvah, one of the figures was Anne Frank, and another one was Rochelle Shoritz, Rachi Shoritz. And so Anne Frank came out wonderful. And someone famous was at the bat mitzvah and wanted it. And my son was sure that I would give it to this woman, and I wouldn't give it to her. I said, it's not mine, it's my granddaughter's. I can't give it away. But that figure was dressed in a plaid skirt. Looked like some of the images you see of her, but it was all very roughly done. She was wearing a jacket and a blouse, and she had a book and a pencil, and I became very attached to that one, and so that was a favorite. And the other one is the Rachi Shoritz one. I also would not give that away, but we are going to give that away now, so that her sons could have it. Hopefully they will want to have it. I don't know. I made her, it may have been 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and she's full of life and color, and there are rose petals from a wedding, where you throw out these plastic rose petals, or roses. So that's all around her feet. And she's wearing a striped black and white dress, and I even made rosy cheeks on her. So that's meaningful for me, and yet I cringe when I think of it having gone to her and her kids. So I still have it in my garage. This is Chaverim, which is a relatively new organization which helps people who have minor problems on the road. This was difficult to do because it had to fit in a relatively small space, and that's a car, and I wanted a lot of people needing help, the whole family, and people say to me, well, where's the mother? And you could come up with answers for me. I had an answer.
She's in the car. No, she's changing the tire.
No, she's not changing the tire. That's Chaverim. Oh, who said that? Judy? You said that?
She's what?
Yes, when they ask me, where's the mother? I say, she's in the hospital having a baby. So, you want to pass this around? This one is the clothing gemach. Okay, so I wanted, the woman who collects the clothing in our neighborhood brings it all into her house. And people leave the clothes in dark plastic bags in front of her house. She has, I would say, this whole space here is filled with these big plastic bags. She designates hours in the weekly news from the shul, and she takes in these clothes, and people come into her side door and take what they want and leave, so that nobody knows who gave and who is taking. So that old fabric that my husband used to bring home when he was in the garment industry, he ended his career in the garment industry in 1996, and I made this year. So that fabric is relatively new because I have my mother's tablecloths from when she got married. I was told by a drawing teacher that I had, who I had, that it's important to save those old pieces of fabric, because when you illustrate a children's book, you want to be authentic. You want to have those designs similar to what they had. So I have a piece of poodle fabric, you know, those pink poodles? So I still have that. If I spoke to any other group, I don't think they know what I was talking about. Okay, so these are real pebbles. Oh, no, they're not. They are lima beans and things like that. Where? This, by the way, I will pass it around, but you have to be careful. It may fall apart. Doesn't matter. The rocks on the bottom, they're pieces of cement when we had French drains put in our basement 2 years ago. And those are like that, and I wouldn't let them cart it away. So all those...
Jack must have loved that.
He's not involved in trying to find a place for them in the backyard. The shiny material is hot wax, melted and dried. This is from the work that I did 2 years ago, a year ago, for my grandson's bar mitzvah. Must be a year and a half ago.
What are you doing for the next one?
This one is for 2. I felt very good because this is going to be used twice for Phyllis's grandson and mine, and for my other grandson, Shmuel's son. This was the Parshat Noach and the bird returning from the ark. This was at one time leaves, olive branches. Hold the bottom and hold this. Oh, and by the way, this is used for tomato plants, for staking tomato plants. And this comes off. And the reason it had to come off was because it was so difficult to transport. So there, I think I used cotton. Yes, I used cotton for the clouds. Hold the bottom when you pass it around. This is Hachnasat Orchim. And one of the groups that comes to our community for Shabbos is Yachad. And I wanted to show that the young adults and older adults in Yachad have disabilities, but I didn't want to emphasize it. So the person in the center is the group leader, and she has her arms around these 2 guests for Shabbos. And I remember one guest in particular saying to me over and over again, "Good Shabbos, good Shabbos." And so she was the inspiration for this. And the reason that this is here, by the way, this comes out. This is wire that I bought many years ago. Well, wherever. I can't see where to put it in right now because I'm holding it. Anyway, the reason there are music notes is because when this organization comes to Staten Island, the whole community is filled with song and laughter. It's a very wonderful time for the people who come, and it's just as wonderful for us who entertain them. Let's see. This one, I cannot send it, well, I can send it around, but you'll have to come up and look at it. Because remember that fabric from my husband? Okay. So, well, it's not only fabric from my husband. This is called the gemach for gowns. It's in somebody's house in the basement. People bring their dresses, people borrow them, they clean them, and they bring them back. This fabric was clothing samples. I was working in a boutique when my mother was sick. I asked for a job for 1 hour a day during lunch hour because my mother lived on 49th Street between 3rd and Lexington. And the woman in the boutique gave me the job for 1 hour a day so that I could visit my mother every day and go there and help her out during lunch hour and then go back. And she gave me these samples of fabric because she was going to throw them out. And I thought, oh, they're so beautiful. Why throw them out? This is probably from my husband, Jack. And this was from when I was working at Camp Moshava. I was given, I went into a fabric store, and they gave me these things for the camp, and these are the scraps that were left over. I do not know how old these are. By the way, they are not meant to be seen from both sides. I mean, I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy. So this, I think, was from when my mother was sewing, and that was when I was 4 years old. So I'm not that old. Okay, so, oh, and the hanger is just wire. And I think I used hot glue to stick the pieces together. And I think that is it.
Everything you
At the,
I'm very strange. She just remarked that when, most people look at something and they see that something. I don't see that something. I see the possibilities behind that something. And it could be a child, it could be a piece of fabric, it could be a seed, it could be anything, but I don't look at things the same way other people look at things, I think because I have poor vision.
Carol, on behalf of our congregation, Young Israel of Fort Lee, I really would like to thank you.
My pleasure.
And also, you do magnificent work.
Thank you.